But in the show this morning, we've been joined by a popular Hollywood actor whose paternal ancestral roots was traced to Sierra Leone. And he's here with us. Good morning and welcome to the show, please.
Good morning, Sammy. How are you?
I'm okay. Lord break, guys. Lord starts now.
Okay.
In the studio to evaluate the 5 years of President Julius Maada Bio, we have been joined by Sidi Yaya Tunis from the main opposition, All People's Congress, to be a part of that conversation. Good morning, Tunis. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Phoebe, and thanks for having me. Good morning, Samuel.
Good morning. And we're also expecting the Minister of Information and Communications, Mohamed Roman Soare, who is running a bit late. According to him, it's due to traffic. But like Phoebe mentioned, we're here to evaluate 5 years of President Julius Maada Bio in the areas of good governance and democracy. So, Sidi, let's get to the crux. Almost 5 years on, where would you peg good governance and democracy under the leadership of President Julius Maada Bio?
Thank you very much, Samuel. Considering how far we have come as a country, I must say that we have several challenges as far as good governance and democracy, are concerned. And I must also say that we are seeing a lot of deterioration when it comes especially to issues around good governance and democracy. And I'll say so because, democracy itself is guided by laws, principles, and also participation of people, be it opposition, citizens, government. And we've seen over the last 5 years a lot of attempts to ensure that certain sets of people are taken out of the democratic process, especially for us in opposition. We're seeing wherein laws have been, twisted.
If we can be specific, it would help guide the conversation, please. People who have been, you mentioned efforts have been made to take out certain people out of the democratic space. Yes, please.
Let me start,
Go ahead.
Let us start with the elections.
Right.
The elections are very clear as to, how people voted. In 2018, we saw President Julius Maada Bio emerge as the winner of the presidential elections. In that same election, it was very clear that the All People's Congress won the legislature and majority of the councils across this country. And what happened? When Parliament started, we all know a good practice anywhere in the world, normally the party with the majority is likely to elect the Speaker of Parliament. And what happened on that day, we saw parliamentarians being kicked out of the well of Parliament by state security forces so that the SLPP will have their way in electing the Speaker of Parliament that they wanted. And we saw that happen. It was challenged. Nothing came out of it. A year later, members of Parliament who were elected by the people of this country were taken out of Parliament by the courts and replaced by people who were never elected. So now we have a situation wherein we had 9 members of Parliament serving in the well of Parliament that were never elected, making laws on our behalf, participating in ratifying, agreements on behalf of the people of this country who never voted them in as members of Parliament. That is one aspect of it. We have seen how repeatedly opposition parties have been attacked. In fact, on that same day,
just before we slide on this one, on that Parliament situation, it was something that was taken to court.
Yes.
And we talk about separation of powers. The executive arm differs from the judiciary, particularly which supposedly should have its independence. So why come back to bring that up as part of the assessment for the executive arm when that is something that falls under the judiciary?
It falls under the judiciary, but we have laws that guides our democracy. We have laws that dictate how things are to be done, even when it involves judiciary. The laws are very clear. If a parliamentarian is removed, there must be by-election for the replacement of that parliamentarian. No law gives the right to court to appoint a parliamentarian.
The conversation is about rating President Bio in office for almost 5 years. So it comes back to what does his presidency have to do with the work of the judiciary?
We are talking about good governance and democracy. So when we see laws flouted that undermines democracy, it is befitting to point them out, and they happen under the watch of President Julius Maada Bio.
What could be his role in this, especially when it's always spoken of about the judiciary being independent? Could the president's involvement in any way undermine the independence of the judiciary?
It is no coincidence, Vivian, that after a year, people can take 10 members of parliament from the opposition APC to court, and then the court will rule, laws are flouted, challenged, and then ignored. That weakens our democracy. That is in no way points out good governance as far as, you know, the leadership of this administration is concerned. But that is
based
not
on your assessment, what was
further,
supposed to be the role of the president in that issue?
We are talking about governance in general. We are talking about democracy in general. And we have never experienced such under any administration. So it is befitting to point it out. We've seen shrinking participation. We've seen we are seeing our democracy dissipate under this administration. And it is worrisome. Look, let us even go further, right? We have seen severally, and this is becoming worrisome, that the judiciary, yes, we have separation of powers, and that is where we are coming in. That parliament, the judiciary, and the executive should all be independent. And which is why I started my premise on the very first step done by this administration that started the whole weakening of our democracy. That singular act in parliament of electing the speaker was the starting point, because it was very clear that the will of the people reflected that Julius Maada Bio won the presidency, APC won parliament. And so the manipulations started in parliament to elect the speaker of parliament, and going further to remove our members of parliament, also going further to have security forces attack offices of opposition parties. It is not just the APC. We have records. Also preventing opposition parties from fully participating in democratic process. These are all clear signs of failure.
Let's hear from the country's Minister of Information and Communication and who is the government spokesman, Mohamed Roman Soare. Good morning and welcome to Wake Up Studio.
Yes, good morning, Samuel.
Right.
Always a pleasure.
So the APC holds a view that democracy and good governance under the leadership or the tenureship of the SLPP is deteriorating. And some of the pointers are that you manipulated Parliament in the sense that you got a speaker that was not supposed to have been elected speaker, because you got members of Parliament of their party out, so they were not able to participate, and also influenced the judiciary to kick out some of their members of Parliament and got SLPP members representing those seats.
Okay, so I'm going to start. I'll respond to those of his allegations later. President Bio has always been a Democrat with very, very stellar credentials. Before he became president, you know, he is credited for being father of democracy for many reasons. In a very turbulent time, he handed over power to a he conducted free, fair, and credible elections and handed over power to a democratically elected government. Many would not have, after a few weeks in office, done what he did. So he's always been brave, he's always been courageous, he's always been watching the seeds of our democracy and good governance. So, voted into office in 2018, he ran on the pledge to run a democratically accountable administration. And here are the results. This is not Radu Suare saying. These grades were not manufactured in Tion or where I come from. This is the MCC scorecard by their assessment. For freedom of information, it's 98%. No journalist is in jail on account of the practice of their profession, because the president, even though was the most castigated by irresponsible sections of the media in the run-up to the elections, he promised to repeal the criminal libel law. That was done. The Right to Access Information Commission has been rebooted. The Independent Media Commission is giving unfettered freedom to do their job. And no citizen is in jail on account of free expression of responsible free speech. Political rights, again, MCC. Sierra Leone scored 94%. These are things we've never passed, right? So these are our ratings. 94% political rights. Civil liberties, 92%. Civil liberties include some of the things he's talking about: right to associate, right to freely express yourselves, right to belong to political parties of your choice, and all of these things, right? Rule of law, we score 65%. These are things the previous administration for 11 years struggled to pass, right? And you talk about many other rights that we have done well on. So this is the government he has chosen to characterize. So, having said that, let us come to the issues. He is aware the same court that he now sits here and castigates is the same court that endorsed their expulsion of the former vice president. Right? That by then the judiciary was independent. We in the SLPP knew that's the highest, that's the seminal court of the land. We accepted the people of Sierra Leone, we moved on.
And you condemned the action as a party?
No, you can't do that. What more can you do other than that? Right?
So that is just to say that decision was wrong from the part of
well, we had an opinion about it, but that is not important in context.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we had an opinion about it. Right? It is the same court that he now sits here in one breath. Oh, the Supreme Court had done well. In another breath, he's now running them down. That's interesting. See how things change? Again, the other bit is he talks about police officers removing their... But these were enforcing the law. You know, he spoke very effusively about the rule of law, about obeying laws. That is all responsible MPs should do. Court orders are meant to be obeyed. And the police is an enforcement organ. Again, we're talking about separation of powers.
Did that not create some level of, did that not taint the image of democracy under your watch?
No. So, are court orders meant to be enforced, or they are just, you know, loose, gaseous declarations by the court? Court orders are meant to be enforced. That was what the police did that day. So let's not bring it in out as if it was a very extraneous thing, you know, that came from nowhere, right? So I think it's very, very important to note that the police acted, you know, by way of enforcing court orders. So nobody gave anybody an undue advantage. I mean, you talk about, you know about the elections of Ansel Lansana. Ansel was removed by from Parliament by a court order, and a replacement was sworn in without any of these things he's talking about. So in law, one of the sources of constitutions themselves are, you know,
just before you come in, let the minister make some clarifications on this. So Sidi mentioned political intimidation on opposition politicians, and how the police have been used to, or should I say, the system has weaponized the police against opposition politicians, dragging them in and out of cells and all of that. Is that something you want to respond to, and whether or not that is...
Well, Sidi was on your program and other sister programs just last week, you know, literally eulogizing the police, praising them for the professional way in which the police, their convention, and all of those things, you know. So I see this as speaking from both sides of the mouth. You know. So yes, that is CD. He sits here. I'm not misquoting him. I listened to him, and I was pleased that our democracy has come a long way to an extent that even the main opposition. And I tell you, something we never benefited from when we were in opposition. The SLBC under me has never been as free as it is now. The APC convention was covered from pay to pay rate, like we say in local parlance, from start to end. And no opposition element would dare say they have been refused an opportunity to speak. If any such case exists, I will resolve it on air as I sit here.
All right. Let's allow Sidi to respond to some of the things. So the minister has highlighted some indices painting the government, I mean, in a very good light, that freedom of information, civil liberties. So all of the things you're claiming, the MCC scorecard is saying, no, it's a green light. They've been doing extremely well. He just talked about the stellar credentials of, stellar democratic credentials of the president and the system.
I mean, Samuel, we all know how some of these indices come about. But let me take the minister's attention to the 2021 United States government human rights record, human rights report on Sierra Leone, that clearly stated that their government has been involved in extrajudicial killings, and they were highlighted: the Pademba Road massacre, the Tonkolimba killing, the Mile 91 killing, and the many arbitrary arrests of opposition leaders. Clearly stated in the 2021 Human Rights Report by the United States State Department. He will not mention that because he knows that these are the things that we have been talking about. How much our opposition parties have been subjected to harassment, you know, under the watch of His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio. And let me even go further. We have always, as an opposition, maintained that for 11 years, we focus on making sure we unite this country. Everybody participates in the democratic process. We allow the law enforcement, the judiciary, the parliament to operate independently. And where things went wrong, the government engaged opposition leaders. Repeatedly, we saw that happen. But
are you saying that you've left a footprint that democracy thrives on as a party?
We did.
Because there were also incidents of political intimidation. There was a popular case of having even Lima dragged to the CID under your
you see, this is where we have Lima was never dragged to CID by the government. Lima was dragged to Lima. Case was between Liman and an employee of the SLBS. Never any government official, and never the government of Sierra Leone under President Ernest Bai Koroma. And he also talked about Ansu Lansana's case. Ansu Lansana's case was a different case. He was never removed by the court. Here is what happened. He was petitioned by a member of the SLPP even before the elections. They went to court, and the guy who petitioned him won. NEC was instructed to have him removed from the ballot paper before the elections. NEC was instructed to have him removed, but they did not remove him. So as far as NEC was concerned, Ansu Lansana was not a candidate. So that is why even after the election, he was never pronounced the winner. The one who came second was pronounced winner. So his happened before the election. In this case...
Are you saying the courts, Sidi, the courts is being influenced politically to favor the SLPP as against the APC, especially when you take that those cases into consideration that got some of your members out of parliament? Is that a claim?
I am saying that the court... The judgment of the court, yes, we are saying separation of powers, but we have laws. The electoral laws is very clear. The 2012 election laws, section 104 is clear. When a member of parliament is removed, whether by court or any other means, there must be a by-election. And this is what happened. 10 members of parliament were removed from the APC by the same court. And where they knew that those who came second were SLPP, they were asked to go on as members of parliament. But the one seat where the one who came in second was NGC, the court asked for a by-election.
And you said the decision of the court was wrong?
Oh yes, it was. Clearly violated the Elections Act, clearly violated the constitution of this country. Members of parliament are to be elected, not by appointment of any nature. So even when they are removed from the court or by the court, they ought to have been elected. Their replacement ought to have been elected and not appointed by the court.
So sorry, just a minute, Mr. Minister. Tunis, this same court ruled in favor of the APC when Sam Sumana was removed as vice president.
He doesn't want to talk about that.
What went wrong that court that was independent then, based on your assessment as a political party, is now radically against the APC?
I am not saying this is not about APC, SLPP. I am talking about laws here. The only competent authority to interpret the constitution of this country is the Supreme Court.
So it still stands on that premise. That same court ruled in favor of President Koma's decision to replace the vice president. It was independent then. How is it now not independent?
I am coming. You asked me a question. Let me answer.
Go ahead.
The court is wide enough. We have the High Court, we have the Appeals Court, we have the Supreme Court. We are talking about three completely different things here. Sam Sumana's issue had to do with constitutional interpretation.
Right.
Clearly so. And when it went to the Supreme Court, when the Supreme Court made their decision, we have taken cases to the Supreme Court that have been decided by the Supreme Court. You never hear us coming back and say, oh, no, the Supreme Court, because they are the only competent authority to interpret the constitution of this country. So that is why anything that has to do with constitution, we take them to the Supreme Court for interpretation. And when they interpret, whether we agree or not, we accept, because as far as our laws are concerned, they are the competent authority. So I don't want us to bring the Sam Sumana issue.
So how different?
To the many cases,
how different is that from the members of parliament, CD?
To the many
from
cases
young party members of parliament who were kicked out of parliament by the courts. How different is that? Because, like you just mentioned, I mean, if you are at a magistrate's court and you are not okay, you have the the High Court. The High Court, if a decision is made, you are not okay, you still can appeal to the appeals court. And like you mentioned, the Supreme Court determines to interpret constitutional matter.
It is completely different.
How?
We're talking about good governance and democracy. And I'm talking about how democracy is guided by laws. And how democracy is guided by how much we are able to implement these laws. The laws are very clear when it comes to elections. You're right. I have stated the section of the Elections Act and also the Constitution. Nobody is saying the court, okay, let us even say the court was right in removing them. What I'm emphasizing, their replacement, there is no law that gives the court the right to replace members of parliament. None. Other than elections.
So legal experts.
And that is what I'm emphasizing.
Legal experts, Mr. Minister, yes, I'm bringing you in. So even legal experts who advocate for the rule of law also sided with the APC saying that the court, we've had conversations here with many of them. They've advanced arguments, so the likes of Suwisembe Mara, the likes of even...
these are opinions. That's why, I like lawyers. I like lawyers. They say opinions.
Right,
the opinions are what they remain until the courts prove it otherwise.
We always look forward to their legal opinions when we have issues around...
so they remain opinions. So I'm not going to comment on other opinions
is that
as against what the law what the law provides. What
the law provides is that, I mean, if there's a problem with a by-election, there must be a rerun. But the court did not order a rerun except for one. The court ordered that those members of parliament who won because of overvoting and other electoral malpractices as deemed by the court were kicked out and replaced by those who in second position.
It is the same court that denied His Excellency's nephew an opportunity. He did not win his appeal. He did not win his petition. He lost out. Others, in the opinion of the court, whose cases had merit, got the justice they deserved. Right? Let us stop this double speaking. When it favors us, we say, oh, the judiciary is done well. When it doesn't, we cry foul. I mean, that's not right. It is the same judiciary. Under his watch, His Excellency has ensured that every district now has resident judges. This has never happened in our 61-year history as a nation. Right? That is access to justice to more and more Sierra Leoneans. Right?
Does access guarantee the administration of justice?
Well, there have been testimonials, right, all over the place of people who were wrongfully sentenced, whose matters have never come up for years. You know, the justice sector put a committee together. They went around. They have been able to right those wrongs, those historic wrongs, right? So now more people are accessing justice at their fingers, at their doorsteps. And, you know, the old saying that justice delayed is justice denied no longer holds. Because if you have a case, you're waiting for a circuit judge to come once every 3 months to try you. Even when you are proved innocent in the end, acquitted and discharged, you would have spent inordinate time in jail. So this is all being resolved. We have to give it to this government. In terms of civil society, this is the very first time again in 61 years or in 62 years that you see an organized civil society government dialogue, you know, led by the VP, where they co-create, you know, they discuss issues of pertinence and of importance to this country. It has never happened.
Was that not a
so the space is free
strategy? Was that not a strategy to co-opt the social?
No, this is not the kind of civil society. When we repeal criminal libel, we did not co-opt you. You are as free as you choose to be. This government does not co-opt. We simply want it to be fair to us, that in the 61-62-year history, we have invested 22% of our budget. Every kid now has a fair chance of going to school. We want it to be fair that we have abolished the death penalty. We want it to be fair to us that we repeal criminal libel. The media is now free than never before. We want it to be fair to us that 30% of women under the recently enacted gender empowerment and equality bill, women can now have 30% of everything. These are the things we're talking about. So they just help broaden and deepen our democracy.
Still in being fair, let's head back to the bone held against the executive arm by the main opposition and other opposition members in Parliament, back to the well of Parliament, which is the home, probably, for good governance and democracy. So the process that led to the election of the Speaker and some of the activities that have gone on in Parliament left the main opposition and other opposition members challenging the executive arm, blaming the president for some of those activities in Parliament, alleging that it's foul play to disenfranchise the main opposition and other opposition members. Well, is that fair play?
We could talk here till the cows come home, Phoebe. This is a court decision. Like someone mentioned.
I'm not talking about the MPs. No, I'm talking about the Speaker, how the Speaker got elected.
That is what I'm saying. That is what I'm saying. Parliament regulates itself, they say, right? And the APC MPs you're talking about were removed from Parliament as a result of a court order. We cannot discuss that further. Anything we say here is an opinion. So let us do justice to the people of Sierra Leone who are listening to us, who have taken their time to follow these discussions. We'll be going around in circles. I cannot sit here to invalidate a court decision.
And that begs the question.
Simply because I hold a contract.
Yes, only your thought. You can still go on with that.
Just before we come to that thought, still on that issue, so the submissions of the main opposition and some other opposition members is that the president, in goodwill, to wanting to ensure that we practice democracy and good governance, could have had...
Should interfere with due process. And we said democracy, separation of powers, and the rule of law. The president will not tinker with the democratic process. He leads the executive. He will allow both the judiciary and the legislature to operate as by law established.
Let me be direct
he cannot
with
tinker
this.
with the process.
Is the president comfortable with the actions that have gone down in Parliament so far?
Well, so that is why in a democracy, there are clear benchmarks. There are clear pathways to seek redress. If you are not satisfied by the decision of a lower court, let us say the magistrate court, the higher court, that is why, you know, you can challenge it.
No, sir, that's not my question. My question is the president comfortable with the actions that have gone down in Parliament?
Oh, absolutely. The president is very, very happy with the things, as long as it is by law. I mean, he is sworn an oath to uphold the law. That's what the oath is all about. He is very happy as long as it happens by law. He will not do anything extrajudicial. He will not participate in anything unlawful. That is why even for the elections, Sierra Leone has never had it so good. For the elections, he announced the elections date way, way, way in advance of elections. I mean, we all lived here, CD and I, all of us here. Before now, people have had to be begged. People have had to be cajoled, to be pleaded with to announce elections time. It's either me, after me, na me, tenure elongation, or something. They make it look like something you keep very close to your chest. This president is very democratic. He wants every political party to have time to organize themselves and to put forward their best foot.
Sidi, let's hear.
Because you can always win a democratic elections.
I mean, the fact of the matter is the president has to be very happy, of course, because everything we see happening favors him. But if, you know, we cannot be democratic in a manner in which we see opposition parties are stopped. It is not a coincidence, Samuel. You see all political parties, with the exception of SLPP and most recently the APC, not being able to hold their national delegates conference. You have political parties, you know, different executives, one being recognized by PPRC and the other not. These are all not coincidence. But let us come back to...
When you say, I just want us to just have some clarity. When you say these incidents are not happening by chance, it means that they are well orchestrated, machinated by who? Who is influencing or using those democratic institutions to stifle the opposition?
It is the way we have seen, and we have raised this severally.
Go ahead.
The way the government has attempted to capture all the state institutions.
Continue.
Appointments into these offices that we have challenged, you know, just so that at the end of the day they will be able to manipulate them in the way that we are seeing happening now. You know, I mean, we always emphasize these things because we know for our democracy to be strengthened, we have to ensure that these institutions are able to operate independently. It is no coincidence, Samuel, under our watch, we had the best human rights record. We were able to move our human rights from Class C to Grade A. We are the most peaceful in the sub-region and third in Africa. He knows that. I mean...
We are Grade A plus now, CD.
But you are not. You have...
we are. I'm on air, challenge me.
Let me come. Don't interrupt me.
Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right? Even with the MPs, we challenged the matter in court. And why we raising this? Because of the delay. When our MPs were removed, we went as far as the Supreme Court. They delayed to even table the case for hearing. So these are all the concerns that we have. You're talking about access to justice. We say justice delayed is justice denied. Go to CID. You still have people that have been there for 8 months, 10 months, without them even being taken to court for their case to be heard. And this is wrong. We know they are only supposed to be held there 72 hours or maximum 10 days. Their case should come up for fair hearing and to be determined whether they are guilty or not of whatever allegations that they are in there for. But you have people there, you know, I spent 3 nights there. So, you know, even though he's saying no politician have ever been...
Were you held because it's also lawlessness, you know, lawlessness, when people choose to be lawless,
expression of,
they will face the law.
Freedom of expression is enshrined in our constitution. To merely state what is inevitable, that the people of this country will have the opportunity to mobilize, to lawfully remove the government from power, I don't see anything wrong with that. Your president is busy calling people Anyampis all over this country. Even when launching the new airport, he was busy referring to people as Anyampis. But I'll tell you, if anyone calls the president Anyampi, somebody will have to write a press release.
You know, I'm happy that you finally conceded it was a new airport.
Somebody will have to come to you. You
yes,
know.
with all of these things you've highlighted, and the indices the minister mentioned, and some of
he has not brought some
of the laws that have been legislated. So you have the women now having that 30% quota they've been clamoring for. You have they've also abolished the death penalty, expunged the criminal aspect of Part 5 of the Public Order Act, and some of these things, and including some of the human rights recommendations that have been accepted and put in Sierra Leone. Are these things worth celebrating?
You see, Samuel, when you're in governance, whatever you do, you have to be sincere. Don't do it because you want to gain international recognition or score political points. The issue of repealing the Part 5 of the criminal libel law, this is a process that started many years ago. They succeeded in completing it, but look at what they did. They introduced the cybercrime law that is even worse than the criminal libel law. Whatever you and I do now, we are being censored. Our communication is being censored. Our text messages are being censored. You know, and that in itself takes away the freedom that you and I should have as far as it relates to what we do, our freedom of speech, our freedom of association. You know, and you will see how they have attempted.
In this era of social media and the internet age, do you not see a need that should have been regulated?
We see how they have attempted to use the cybercrime to go after opposition politicians. We saw a classic case with Honorable Kemosi Say. They wanted to use the cybercrime law to go after him. But unfortunately for them, they quoted the wrong law. Even their own law, they don't understand it. They just brought it up to go after opposition leaders.
Okay, so let me comment quickly.
Tunis, in your opinion, was there no need for the cybercrime law, especially when you consider that social media particularly had become a menace that people were using against other people, threatening not only national security, but also defaming other people? Was there no need absolutely for cybercrime?
This is where we go wrong. When we talk about cybercrime, it is not limited to social media activities. That is a minute part of it.
But it includes it.
There are more graver issues around cybercrimes than that the communications you and I do on social media. But that is what they want to use. That is where their emphasis is, because the crime itself, as envisaged by us and our international partners, to ensure that we are able to curb crimes such as money laundering and other graver crimes, they focused on what you and I do on social media, so that they see this as an opportunity to clamp down on the opposition and to also continue to suppress our freedom.
We would be wrapping this up in a bit. But Tunis,
I've not had time.
You had enough time.
You are not moderating this program today. I need to be given an opportunity to speak.
So don't influence.
Gentlemen, hold on. Tunis.
I go home and relax. When I'm here, it's business.
Gentlemen, please focus on the presenters. Tunis, with the way it goes, we get to a point where internationally, with MCC scorecard and other international ratings, Sierra Leone does well. But when it comes to especially having a conversation with the main opposition, you don't necessarily toe that line. Where is the gap that these people, these ratings from MCC, they're aware of what's going on in Sierra Leone? There's a systematic process to come to the conclusion of those decisions to rate Sierra Leone as a country. So where's the gap that we are passing those ratings as a country, but then with the main opposition, it does not reflect?
Fibian, I have been in governance. I know how ratings are done.
Why did it not pass today?
Hey, Mr. Minister.
Sorry.
Quickly.
I know how ratings are done. right?
And some of those ratings, there were times when your government was also approved by some of these institutions.
And I must tell you that we are the only government that have received money from MCC. Because no, I'm coming.
So back then the MCC was doing its job right, but now it's not.
Nobody has criticized MCC here.
You know how some of these ratings are.
I have not mentioned anything about MCC scorecard. I only brought the minister's attention to the U.S. human rights report that he knows about.
I'll comment on that in a bit. I'll comment on that in a bit.
I have not challenged MCC scorecard in any way. As a matter of fact, but
the connection,
I need a moment.
Hold on, Tunis.
I'm coming.
No, you hold on. The connection is you don't necessarily challenge MCC, but if in areas that they pass the government, you challenge those areas, it still comes back to the same conversation.
We are talking about good governance here and democracy. I am an opposition. I know for sure how much, look, before I became opposition, I was in government. And we know the gains that we made as far as democracy is concerned, which is why President Ernest Bai Koroma was invited to White House many times, and to other democratic fora many times. Sierra Leone was used as a model for sound and improved and strengthened democracy in Africa. I know that. And as an opposition, I also know where we are. It is not just about democracy, but the freedom. I know how much our people have gone through under this administration as far as their freedom is concerned. He's talking about civil society. You know how many civil society activists that have been arrested and locked up, that some of us have had to go and try to bail them out. So this idea of democracy.
How do you, as main opposition, bail out a CSO?
What do you mean? I mean, as citizens, whoever is arrested, we go to them. And let me come in.
He's been coming
I have not challenged MCC. In fact, as some of these scores that they enjoy now, it is because of the work that we did. You know, when you talk about anti-corruption commission scores.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you there, Tunis. We're trying to manage the time. And Mr. Minister, you would respond to his submissions. But before that, quickly, the status of, as we still have this conversation on good governance and democracy, accountability comes part of that. Now, we have a situation where the president, we remember vividly in his inaugural speech, made mention of the 3 wars he's fighting as in the country. One of them particularly was corruption. And going back on the history, when the SLPP party took over governance, the GTT report was predicated on the Auditor General's report. And back then, the Auditor General was supported for doing an absolutely fantastic job. Fast forward to after the same Auditor General did reports that did not necessarily favor the administration, unprofessionalism kicked in. Investigation of her unprofessionalism is still ongoing. No feedback to the public. How do you defend that? Especially when, again, the president said he's going to fight a war against corruption.
I've been long around here. I know that if time and seasons change, why not man? I mean, that's how I'm going to respond to it. I mean, we know the extent to which the former Auditor General went. We raised issues with it. She's currently facing a tribunal, and I understand she has been very uncooperative. They have asked for inordinate number of adjournments leading to delays.
And if she's that unprofessional in the things she did, does this...
I'm not going to pass verdict on it. We have had enough banter around it before.
Does this also lead us to question the reports she had done for previous administrations, which is, again, what predicated the GTT report?
Well, I'm saying the Auditor General is not on trial here. She is facing a tribunal.
It's part of the democracy.
In the democracy, in fact, this is why we have to respect this democracy. It's doing very well. Because when actions are taken, citizens always have recourse to seek redress. And that's a democracy. It does not mean that people should not be, prosecuted for things they do. The important point in a democracy is you must have outlets to seek redress. She has been given the opportunity. She is facing the tribunal, where she is free to bring in as many witnesses, to hire the services of a legal representative. That's a democracy for you.
As you say that, moving away from that, and Sidi mentioned the state of human rights report published in 2021.
In the US, yeah.
Exactly. And the things highlighted there, the arbitrary arrest, the killings, and and the human rights abuses, are those not significant enough to question the state of good governance and democracy you've talked about? You've given indices.
No. We are not saying we have a perfect democracy. The democracy we have is definitely thriving under this administration. Are there challenges? Of course. When you have an opposition that wants to take the law into their own hands, an opposition that does not want to debate alternative policy issues, an opposition that incites on suspecting, an opposition that preys on vulnerable youth, the very opposition whose bad governance has made them so vulnerable, prey on them, sending them harm's way, sending them to be in conflict with the law. That is why you get what you get. In McKinney, for example, we are talking about a government generator to be removed. They stayed behind, you could see their fingerprints all over it. They incited on suspecting young boys. Sadly enough, lives were lost. It's unfortunate and regrettable, but that is it. When we were in opposition, we had Wednesday press conferences. I was a regular member of that thing. With our chairman will address, if you want to choose free quality education, we'll do alternative policies. But you would never see the APC do that. Every day, they will use ventriloquists abroad, they will use surrogates abroad, proxies abroad to threaten the peace and stability of this country. As a government, we will not sit idly by to see that happen. The Pademba Road massacre, for example, they call it.
Right.
The Pademba Road fallout. I mean, there were audios, videos shared in many forums on social media. We were all here, right? Days before then, days before the incident in Tumbo, days before all of these. And the president made a state broadcast on that. We will no longer allow lawlessness. This is a democracy. There are legitimate, legal, and decorous pathways to realize political goals.
Could the situation have been handled better? Could the situation have been handled better?
The situation could have been better. Opposition parties use legal, decorous, peaceful, legitimate pathways to gain power.
So the claim has always been that government framing national policies as a tool for vengeance. Is that anything to go by?
Well, if that were the case, that is why we frame the free quality education. Our vengeance is to ensure that we leave no kid behind, whether you are from Tiun, from Bombali, from anywhere. That is why we frame the repeal, so that every journalist... So, I mean, it's nonsense. It's a very ridiculous...
So as we wrap up, the other claim in that very report that I just cited from the Institute for Governance Reform, that same report is saying opposition as a way of escaping accountability is using, party supporters as shield. Could that be the case with what the minister is submitting
absolutely
here?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not, Samuel. For 5 years, we have gone through just about every form of harassment that you can imagine that would have warranted us to put our supporters on the street and make this country ungovernable.
Like Dr. Samora threatened?
But we held our supporters back. We held them back. We kept them in tune. We have had our offices attacked. We did not respond. We have had us being called terrorists. We did not respond. But we have seen repeated crimes committed involving no less a unit of the security force, but the presidential guards. Pademba Road massacre, they were involved. August 10th, they were involved. McKinney, they were involved. And you see them bragging on video of getting rid of anyone who would dare stand in the way of President Bill. And unfortunately, the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs was here. And he said, they will crush anyone who will stand in the way of the security forces. And that is a policy statement
who would disrupt the peace. Not necessarily stand in front of the police. Just to be fair to him, he's not here.
Okay, so here...
So gentlemen, we do not have time. Let's allow you quickly. You have to send messages of peace to your people. We're in the build-up to
we
the
have
June
always
polls.
done that.
Please
but
go
I
ahead.
have to say this. I have to speak on a very serious issue going on. And this is the attack on our development partners, especially our heads of mission in this country, by authorities You know, and most recently, we had a statement from the Electoral Commissioner South calling them hypocrites and accusing them of trying to push regime change, and now Honorable Member of Parliament. Let me state this. Our development partners have done nothing different than they have been doing before. They are not favoring any particular political party. They have never favored any particular political party. Their interests have always been development, peace, national cohesion, and to ensure that we have free, fair, credible, and transparent
would have told you there. We do not have time. Let's quickly have your closing, your party shots, Mr. Minister.
A few things.
Yes, go ahead. Quickly, in a minute.
Anytime the APC is in power, our democracy is in deep peril. Anytime they are in opposition, both in opposition and in power. On the eve of 2007 elections, the former president said in a BBC interview he would make the country ungovernable if the elections that year did not go his way. Fast forward 2018, Dr. Samora Kamara, the candidate that lost the elections to President Biu, threatened same. Right? So you see a and very recently he was in Makeni inciting already vulnerable young people, telling them things he knew were not true about the administration. But this is what the APC tribes.
That is not true, Mr. Minister.
No, it's on tape.
Few seconds.
It is true. He was saying, Buabi said, you don't get a job if you are Kamara, you are this. I mean, these are people aspiring to lead. These are people aspiring to lead our great nation. I'll talk about national cohesion. City and protected. Could you kindly let me? No, let me wrap up. I understand. I feel your pain in the opposition. The simple, you are not used to internal democracy. Nobody has a hand in the challenges you are facing. But these are the things democracy come with. Over the years, you have kept your people under, under a veneer. They cannot speak. Now that you are letting loose, the people are taking their rights into their own hands.
Thank you very
Welcome
much,
to democracy. No government has any interest in your going to court perpetually. You have to respect your members' individual opinions.
National Publicity Secretary of the Opposition All People's Congress Party. Thank you very much, gentlemen.